The courtroom buzzed with quiet chatter, the kind that hangs heavy before a storm. Rows of people leaned forward in their seats, curious to see how this trial would unfold. At the defendant's table stood Marcus Reed, just 20 years old, dressed in a modest suit that seemed too big for him. He stood tall, but his eyes carried the calm of someone who knew more than he let on. Across from him sat Judge Harold Whitaker, a man with a reputation, sharp tongue, sharper bias. His robe barely concealed the arrogance in the way he leaned back, gavel in hand, lips curled in a smirk. "Son," the judge said, his voice dripping with condescension, "you really think you can argue your own case? This isn't some high school debate club." A ripple of laughter broke through the courtroom. From the bailiff, the stenographer, even a few jurors who thought the judge's amusement gave them permission to sneer. But Marcus didn't flinch. He adjusted his tie, straightened his back, and calmly replied, "With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm fully capable of speaking for myself." The prosecutor, a man named David Lang, chuckled as he shuffled his papers. "This will be quick," he whispered to the jury, loud enough for Marcus to hear. Lang rose confidently. "Ladies and gentlemen, the state will show beyond a reasonable doubt that Marcus Reed was caught trespassing on private property late at night, refusing to comply with officers. The evidence is simple. He was where he shouldn't have been, doing what he shouldn't have been doing." Judge Whitaker smirked, already satisfied. "Sounds pretty straightforward to me," he muttered. Marcus remained still, silent, watching, waiting. When the prosecutor finished, the judge turned to Marcus. "Your turn, son. Entertain us." A few chuckles echoed, but Marcus didn't hesitate. He walked slowly toward the jury box, his footsteps steady, his voice clear. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution wants you to believe this case is simple. But the truth, like justice, is rarely simple." Marcus lifted a sheet of paper. "First, the officers claim I ignored their commands. But according to their own body cam footage, submitted as evidence, those commands were issued after I had already stopped and raised my hands. That's not resistance. That's compliance." The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Marcus continued, his tone razor-sharp but calm. "Second, the property I allegedly trespassed on? That's the public library. A building that, according to City Code Section 415, is considered public grounds until 11 p.m. I was stopped at 9:47. He let the words hang in the air. "So tell me, since when is visiting the library a crime?" The jurors exchanged glances. The smirk faded from Lang's face. Judge Whitaker tapped his gavel, irritated. "Don't get clever with me, young man. You're no attorney." Marcus inhaled, steadying himself. "You're right, Your Honor. I'm not an attorney." He paused, letting the silence build. "But I am a Supreme Court intern, and part of my work involves studying cases just like this one. Cases where citizens' rights are trampled by those sworn to protect them." The room froze. The judge's smirk cracked. The jury leaned forward. Even the prosecutor blinked, stunned. Marcus reached into his folder and pulled out a letter, official, embossed with the seal of the Supreme Court of the United States. He laid it gently on the table for the court clerk. "This letter verifies my position in the chambers of Justice Alvarez. I've studied constitutional law at the highest level, and what I see in this case is not justice, it's prejudice." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Whitaker's face flushed red. For the first time in years, he had no witty retort. His gavel hovered, but his hand trembled slightly. Marcus looked directly at the jury. "The prosecution asks you to see me as a trespasser. But the truth is, I was exercising my right to access a public building. The only thing I was guilty of was not fitting the picture some people had in their heads. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't dangerous. I was a young black man carrying books home from the library." He paused, his voice tightening just enough to carry the weight of his words. "And tonight, it could have cost me everything." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. The prosecutor muttered something about insufficient time to review new information. But even he knew the case was unraveling. Judge Whitaker cleared his throat, his arrogance swallowed by unease. This court finds. The charges dismissed. The gavel fell. Gasps. Whispers. A few claps from the back of the room before order was restored. Marcus gathered his papers, calm as ever. But as he turned to leave, Judge Whitaker called after him, his voice smaller now. "Mr. Reed, keep pursuing that law degree. The system could use someone like you." Marcus glanced back, offering the faintest nod. Then he walked out, not just as a defendant, but as a symbol of what happens when truth collides with arrogance. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. But Marcus kept walking, steady and unshaken, because this wasn't about winning a case. It was about exposing the truth. How many others had stood in that same courtroom, without the knowledge, the courage, or the chance to fight back? Marcus had the tools to defend himself. But what about those who don't? This story is a reminder. Prejudice has no place in justice. And sometimes the ones dismissed as kids or fools are the ones who know the law better than those enforcing it. If this story made you think, share it. Subscribe for more stories that matter.